Hey, welcome back to Midas Letter Live. My guest this segment is Hadley Ford. You might recognize him. He's been here before. He's the CEO of iAnthus Capital. Hadley, thanks for coming back.
Thank you so much for having me here. I greatly appreciate it.
Hadley, the burning question on a lot of Canadian investors' minds, especially those invested in Canadian companies that operate in the United States, is what is exactly the impact of President Trump's apparent reversal on behalf of the Attorney General in the United States generally towards marijuana and federal prohibition?
Well, it's exceptionally positive. We refer to it as another pebble on the scale. No one should invest, no one should work, no one should spend their time and treasure in cannabis in the United States unless they think it's going to be a regular way business. Because the opposite would imply that we're all going to jail. So we know what direction it's going in, and it's just a matter of getting there. And you'll see things like the Trump announcement, the John Boehner announcement, even Mario Cuomo in New York City said it's inevitable we're going to have full adult use in the state of New York. These are all little things that are going to go forward. They'll be blockbusters at the time, but they shouldn't be surprising if your thesis is this will be a regular way industry at some point in the future.
So it's safe to conclude that the impetus at the federal level is irrevocably towards legalization and deprohibition.
Ultimately, both sides of the aisle have to catch up with the political will of the people. And clearly cannabis polls on a medical side, 90% of the people want to see full medical programs. On the full adult use, we're up over 60% acceptance rate right now. Eventually politicians will hear the siren call of the votes.
Not that there are any issues surrounding the credibility of the current president,
None.
but what risk might there be that the president is somehow incentivized or convinced otherwise by operators behind the scene to reverse that stance and become more of a hawk towards prohibition?
I think there's zero chance that that happens. If you go back into Trump's political history back into the 90s, he's on record as saying things that are even more aggressive than his current stance on cannabis. At one point he said that drugs should be legalized. We're losing the war on drugs. It should be regulated. It should be taxed. And I think that that's been his view on cannabis all along. I think it'll continue to do so. I think there's obviously no political love lost between Sessions and Trump. So you also have a personal component of where if Sessions going left, Trump's going to go right. If Trump goes right, Sessions going left. And we know where Sessions stands on cannabis. So we know where Trump's going to stand on cannabis.
Sure. And you've had no hesitation in expanding your activity and investments in the U.S. market. Most recently, announcing the acquisition of Pilgrim Rock. Tell me about that and what's going on generally in Massachusetts.
Well, we had developed a cannabis business in the state of Massachusetts with some very good partners, Vicente Cederberg. They own 20% of our operations there, which manifests itself in a management company called Pilgrim Rock. They decided they'd rather have their ownership at the iAnthus level. Who wouldn't? It's a liquid stock that's going to perform very well over time. So we bought them out of their private investment position with iAnthus stock. That gives us 100% ownership, allows us to consolidate all the numbers and report in a very simple and straightforward way for our shareholders to understand what's going on. And that's important because Massachusetts is going to be a great state. It's going.
What's the population?
It's got about 7 million people.
Okay, that's a good market.
You've probably got 20 to 25 million tourists every year. And it's going to be a full adult use state this summer. And we think the surrounding states of New York, Connecticut, and the like, you have 20 to 30 million people who live within an easy drive of Massachusetts. So we often refer to the state as the Colorado of the East, but you also have a much larger, denser population that may come to the state to enjoy the fruits of free cannabis.
Sure, you bet. Okay, so give us an overview of the financial picture for iAnthus now and going out 12 months.
Oh, sure. So we have three what I would call our starter markets where we learned the business, three smaller opportunities, Vermont, New Mexico, and Colorado. We also have three big greenfield opportunities in Massachusetts, New York, and Florida, and those states represent about an addressable market of 48 million people. We're beginning to build out those operations. Massachusetts will have, I think we just did our first harvest, and we will have first revenue there in our store in the city of Boston, end of April, beginning of May. We've begun delivery in Florida. We will have our first dispensary open up later this year. We've signed leases on 2 others. So I think what you'll see is a company that's going from a low revenue base to a big acceleration. If you think about the development of any business, you kind of go along the bottom of the bathtub and then zoop up it goes. We're in that inflection point this year. So 2018 We'll begin to look a lot more like a regular retail operator with same-store growth, new store openings, and things like that.
Does iAnthus have any ambitions towards international export or markets, or is it focused exclusively on the United States?
Exclusively on the United States right now. You've got the world's largest legal cannabis market, very little competition. And you've probably got, depending upon which numbers used, a $75 billion market, and no one has more than 1% market share. So it is wide open, and we love that opportunity.
Sure. Unlike Canada, where right now it's only dried flower and extracts that can be consumed, except in some cases there are some inhalers available, etc. In the United States, it's like there's edibles are legal, vapes are legal, waxes, concentrates.
You seem very facile with all the terms.
Well, let's just say quality control is one of my obligations to the industry. So no, but it's really it's such a much more mature marketplace. And is that uniform across all the states, or is it just certain of the states?
It varies state. It's a great point, and it varies state by state. And that's one of the things that you have to be very cognizant of as an operator, or what are the regulations that you have to deal with in each state. So you can have some states that offer flower, edibles, derivatives, sort of anything that you want to consume. Then you have other states that limit that. And we think of it state by state on an addressable market perspective. So the state itself can limit the addressable market in a number of ways. It can be medical only as opposed to full adult use. They can limit it by the number of indications that can be treated or the form of ingestion. We typically look for markets with a large addressable market, so that would start with a large population. A full rec program would be nice, but if it's not full rec, we want to see a lot of indications and a lot of ingestion methods, and then also the ability to get a card to be treated. And that's how we pick our markets, and so far we've been very successful. Knock on whatever this is made out of.
Polymer?
Knock on polymer that will continue.
Right. All right, Hadley, that's a great update. We're going to leave it there for now.
Great.
We'll come back to you in a quarter's time. Happy 420.
Yes, happy 420. Thank you very much.